grants program, Ethereum Foundation in general. And then the question that I get asked a lot, it's all right, I'll just do it like this. The question I get asked is, these are a bunch of questions, but these are the rumors that I hear. I get on calls with people too, and this is what I hear. I heard someone tells me that the grants program shut down, which is weird because when you get an invite from me, it actually says Ecosystems is a pro program. So that's cool. And then the EF has stopped funding any ETH1 work. There's zero of that happening. I see it on Twitter all the time, which is cool. And apparently all we do is fund ETH2. Not great. But I guess, it's weird to hear from community members who work on ETH1 tell me that ETH1 is not funded because their work is being funded by us. It's getting hot. The corona is hitting me. And then the last thing I hear is that the EF is out of funds, or we're just stockpiling funds. We're just like this crazy banker standing in the back, just hoarding all the money. That also is not happening, and I'll get into that. So, what is the ecosystem support program? I like to talk about the grants program and the ecosystem support program as sort of an evolution of the grants program. Right, the grants program isn't gone; it's still here. But we like to think about ecosystem support in a more holistic level. So over the past 2 years, almost $60 million has been awarded to over 200 projects. A lot of what drove this narrative is, from the grants program, it was always this question of what should or shouldn't the EF fund? And that's just insufficient, right? We want to know more about what does the community need? It doesn't come from this top-down entity that's stockpiling money. It actually comes from the community that we're serving. What is it that the community actually needs? What are the challenges you're facing? How do we actually address these challenges? How do we identify what's not out there yet? And we can't do that. It is solely on the community to kind of upend those for us to really identify and try to attack. So with the old grants program, we knew that financial support works, right? We give teams money. They're able to build a team. They're able to have runway and do what they need to do, have a home, shelter, feed their kids, family. But that's not it. There's so much more past financial support, right? There's so many different challenges that you face as a team, as a project, really trying to build open source infrastructure that's just not financial. There's so much more in that support. And so the question was, how do we address these issues? How do we surface it, and how do we actually tackle it? So the Ecosystem Support Program, for us, support, we want to really kind of exemplify that it doesn't mean just funding, right? It's actually proactive instead of reactive. We're looking out for challenges that we can help address. We're looking for needs of the community, for projects that haven't raised their hand to say, this is a problem. Because a lot of times the community can be open and charming, but we're not always that embracing. Newcomers often feel scared to kind of raise their hand and ask for help. But that's what we're here for, and that's what we want ESP to be. It allows the opportunity to leverage more than just what's immediately in front of you, right? We have developers all across the globe, and they all have individual challenges. So the question is, how do we actually use where the EF sits as this neutral party? And if we take Aya's example of constellations, right, we're just one star and everyone else is their own star. How do we make sure the gravitational pull is continually kind of going around and we can connect all these constellations together? Who do you need to talk to? Do you know who that person is? If not, maybe we know. And if I don't know, maybe someone else knows. We know so many other people within the space. So it's not just one connection, right? It's interweaving this giant web of the Ethereum community. But that doesn't mean that we are kind of skirting the responsibility of open source funding. We're going to continue doing that. As you saw, $60 million over 2 years is pretty good. We continue to do recurring research funding. We do local grants. So in local communities, we do smaller grant programs. Targeted coordination. So we bring teams together, whether it's at hackathons, at events like this. It's really kind of making sure that people meet and can mesh. We try to help find mentorship. right? New developers coming into the space, what is it that they need help with? How do we best make sure that they have the right track to be successful? And moreover, identifying what that success is, right? We have technical feedback, we have security audits, we can connect you to others who do security audits, introductions, and there's so much more that I'll get to in a bit. So this is the juicy stuff. This in the next slide, I think it is probably when people want to take pictures, the 20 of us here. So non-financial support, it's, as I said, right, identifying needs, challenges, and kind of unpacking that. There's project guidance. It's really doing technical due diligence, idea validation. What is it that you're working on? How can we actually define what a roadmap looks like? What does a budget look like? These are all challenges that I think we're afraid to speak up and say we don't know how to actually do this. But that's okay. There's connections, as I said before, making sure that we're all connected. Leveraging each person's individual network to make a giant Rolodex, for lack of better terms. Community feedback, right? How do we address some of these research questions on ETH research? How do we do it magician's rings, right? How do we actually have a conversation and dialogue about some of the tougher research challenges and questions that we can't answer? But also appropriate funding resources. And what that means is we might not necessarily be the right foundation to fund your project, but that's okay, right? You want to work in Ethereum, we can also connect you to other government grants, to VCs if that's something that you're looking for, to other foundation funding sources like Open Tech Fund. There's so much more out there that we might know of that the rest of the community members might not. We do exposure, whether it's putting you at ETH Global events. Maybe we're connecting with organizers of EthCC. Maybe it's DevCon. There's so many things that are out there to provide signaling that I think people really crave. And cloud services credits. We're a part of the AWS Activate program, as well as some other programs that provide, I think, a couple $1,000s of AWS credits, GCS credits. But that's just the beginning. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what other challenges are out there. We want to know more. So part of this is an open call to have everyone submit requests. Maybe that'll inundate our team, but that's okay. We want to know what else is out there that we can help with. Okay, 2019, year in review. What did we fund? This is juicy. This will be out really soon in a nice little post. ETH1, we gave money to. This includes, stateless client work, testing, elliptic curve research. This is all part of this whole bucket that is ETH1. And it's not fair to kind of bucket all of that into one little thing. But also we do layer 2 research, right? Layer 2 work, implementation. That's all part of this giant thing that we're making sure we can achieve scalability and usability, right? So, yeah. You guys know ETH2, we've done that. Cryptography research, Macy, ZK, the works. What's interesting is the developer experience and the community education. This is something that people always ask about. Why haven't we funded more tooling? Why haven't we funded more ways for enhancing developer experience? And we have. We funded Biddler. We funded a lot of onboarding tools to make sure that people actually have the required testing, right? Whiteblock is part of that. And then community education. How do we make sure that different regions around the globe actually have the resources to have these communities and really kickstart what New York had or SF had in the early days of Ethereum, or sorry, Berlin. That was Americentric of me, I apologize. And I forgot to put this, but there's also Moloch DAO. There's other alternative funding resources like Gitcoin, CLR, bounties, grants. So now how do we apply? That's a good question, guys. So this is what the application process looks like. I know it actually didn't look as bad on the computer, but the font's black. So you start by getting in touch, and that is just applying on our website, which is ecosystem.support. Really easy. That was a nice website that was available. And you meet a guide. We have a point of contact to really walk you through the process. If you have any issues, if you want to follow up, if you need a status check, your guide will be there for you. There's a peer review. Internally, we'll talk about what is it that you need, how do we address these needs and challenges, and how do we move forward with that. And then we'll contact you. We won't just leave you dry and just say, peace. you'll actually hear from us. You'll actually get an email at least, a phone call, and really try to find out, what is it that's missing from this application? What more do you need to actually find the right resources? And that's something that we want to uncover. I like to say we're yes men, right? But also we're a diverse crew, so yes people. So it's yes. Let's try to address that. Let's not say no first. Find the appropriate resources. So if it's financial support, if it's other funding, other resources that we are providing, let's figure out how we can actually collaborate, how we can showcase this. Let's figure out what are the higher level goals and how do we inform these priorities for the ecosystem, and why is this important for us to fund or provide other resources for. And then there's technical interviews, the works, and then a decision. So pretty simple, right? It's not too daunting. So what are we looking for? This is I guess most people say it's a mystery, but it's kind of weird because we try to articulate this in almost everything we do. We like to ask ourselves, what are the overarching goals that we want to accomplish, right? And what more precisely are we trying to do here? What is the ecosystem support program actually providing here? How do we hope to accomplish this? And what are the desired outcomes for this, right? How do we make sure that every step of the way we're always marching towards a goal? So some of the high-level allocation categories, we have grow usage. They're very vague, and intentionally so. We want to make sure that we're not pigeonholing any team or project or ourselves. 5 minutes, okay. So grow usage, grow community, grow developer base, research capabilities, improve developer output, support research and development that makes Ethereum tomorrow a reality. Let's make sure we can actually get to that point. And then just general upkeep. Let's make sure that the Solidity team actually has their support, right? Let's make sure that all the resources that are out there today can continue to provide the valuable services that they do. What are we not looking for? This is a joke, but I can skip that. We're not going to sell your token. We don't do ICOs, I guess anymore, because we did the Ethereum ICO. We don't invest in your new fund. Unfortunately, we don't do that. And we don't know where DevCon 6 is going to be. Sorry, guys. So tell us what you're working on at Ecosystem Support. There's a simple inquiry form. It's super short, I think 5 or 6 questions. We have office hours at ETH Paris, the Unhackathon this weekend, or starting to. I'm going to hold my mouth. There's a blog post from the DoD announced today that it's at ESGI. And what do I have last? Yes, Q&A. I have 3 minutes. What? Do I have questions? 4 minutes. Nice. Yes. Should I give this to you?
Hey, do you, I can't remember if you covered this, do you also look at like acceleration and incubation for teams?
So it depends, right? We do a light version of that. We try to make sure that they have the right resources, but we don't formally incubate teams. It wouldn't be like a traditional YC type model, but it would be making sure that you have the right resources in place if that's what you were gonna go, if that's where you want to go, we can provide you that path towards there.
Sure. No, it's just, having seen this myself, and getting grant funding is great. It's like a first step, but generally teams who are very creative and great coders don't tend to be the best business people.
Absolutely.
And often they do need that extra bit of support, but it seems tricky to find that.
Yeah, it is. So we try to, at least if we don't know the answer, right? Because I think Web3 space is extremely interesting because we don't know what the right business model is going to be. If you kind of just preach out there like, this is it, we're just going to take fees, you just essentially become a rent taker again. So what's the point? But that's not wrong, right? So profitability, sustainability, these are all hard questions that I don't think we have answered yet.
Cool. Yeah, I agree.
Any more questions? No? All right. Let's see some grant or ESP applications. Cool.